one and all, and listen to tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Danishes and Dragons, your RPG morning show. My name is Ryan Howard. I am your host and king of the boneheads, and I am a little bit quiet in my own ears. Let me crank up that volume there. All right, here we go. Cool. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Take a sip of coffee from my Avengers mug. Alrighty. Cool. So, today, as the title suggests, we are going to be building a Battlesmith from Tasha's Cauldron of Everything. This is also available in the Eberron campaign setting for anyone who has that, but doesn't have Tasha's Cauldron yet. And so we're just going to be kind of talking about specifics around that. There's a character that I have played before. So, Elfie, this is the remnants of the last of that press house, and then there was a little bit left of another kind of coffee. So I put that in mine. I think it was one of the E&B coffees. So I'm sorry if I took your coffee. Yeah, E&B is, for anyone who is unfamiliar, E&B is one of the great roasters that we have that's local here in the Nashville area, and they're a very cool company. Every time Elfie orders some from them, they actually send like a personal note to her, which I think is pretty cool. I know a lot of these roasters are very small companies with kind of family owned. A lot of them do kind of personal touches, but to put in like a full-on handwritten personal note for everyone who orders, that's pretty cool. That's a cool thing. So, Elfie loves to support them. I am always down to support them. I just love my press house coffee. Thank you, Tom Woods. Anyway. This is not just an episode where I explore a new class and kind of go over it. If you paid attention in my Tasha's Cauldron review, you'll notice that I didn't go into great detail about what all the Artificer can do. That's because I knew I was going to do this episode, and I believe I actually said, we're going to cover this on Saturday when I was doing that review. So yeah, today's Saturday, and we're going to cover it. But first, I want to talk a little bit about breakfast, because this is Danishes and Dragons, and with the holidays coming up next week, specifically, I want to talk about holiday traditions around breakfast, because there is not an insignificant number of people who have some kind of breakfast tradition related to the holidays. Christmas morning is obviously a thing, and with the morning, oftentimes comes food, because you wake up and you're hungry. So there are, or rather there was one, and then it morphed into a different tradition. There was a holiday breakfast tradition that I always had growing up, that kind of went away after a while, just because relatives passed away and we stopped doing Christmas in that capacity. But growing up, we always went to my dad's parents' house first on Christmas morning. We'd get up early. We basically did our Christmas morning on Christmas Eve, and then we got up early and went over to where my dad's family lived, and we did Christmas morning there. And it was always a good time, because my grandpa, Papa Ronnie, would make breakfast, and it was always just it was very, like, southern breakfast. It was the only time in my life where I was able to eat country ham, which, again, for anyone unfamiliar with country ham, imagine like a slice of ham, like you would get on, at Christmas dinner or something like that, but salted and preserved into this just kind of still very good, still ham consistency, but this a little bit harder state. The way that, salt preserves meat. Basically salted ham that was pan fried. And it was very good, but I'll be damned if it wasn't the saltiest thing I ever ate. Country ham, for anyone who doesn't know, is extremely salty. Very good. Delicious. But one of the saltiest things you'll ever eat. So there was always country ham and bacon and sausage and biscuits. And my grandma, Mama Rani, would make sausage balls. That's a funny thing about our names for our grandparents growing up. We called both sides Mama and Papa. They had the same grandparent name. So to differentiate them, and I believe it was my older sister who started this, because I remember this just as long as I lived, as soon as I could talk, as soon as I was told who these people were, it was with this identifier. So I'm pretty sure my older sister came up with this naming convention. But my maternal grandfather's name is Jim, and my paternal grandfather's name was Ronnie. So my paternal grandparents were Mama and Papa Ronnie, and my maternal grandparents were Mama and Papa Jim. Still are. Although now I just call them Mama and Papa, because unfortunately Mama and Papa Ronnie passed away several years ago. But it was actually back when I was in middle school. One died when I was in 6th grade, and the other when I was in 8th. But, anyway, at Mama and Papa Ronnie's house, we would always have Christmas morning and eat just like a regular southern breakfast with biscuits and meat and eggs, and it was always a good time, a great time. They made grits, and we were not allowed to say that Santa Claus didn't exist in Mama Ronnie's house, or we wouldn't get anything for Christmas. That was the rule. Even as we got older, that was the rule in the house when my dad was my age. So this is like a standing thing that I was drug into. But as I said, when everyone passed away, my aunt and uncle on my dad's side, my dad's brother, they're still around. Obviously, they're my cousins on that side of the family are still around. And we see them when we can. Everyone's kind of scattered now. But we stopped doing Christmas morning there when I was in... Yeah, it would have been when I was in 8th grade, because Papa Ronnie passed away in the fall of my 8th grade year. And so, yeah, from the time I was 14 on, Christmas morning became very different for us, in that we actually had Christmas morning at home. And, for what we would do there, I kind of skipped a step here. But what we would do after Christmas morning at Mama and Papa Ronnie's house was we would then pack up the car and drive over to where my maternal grandparents lived, which is all the way the other side of town. I actually feel bad for my parents, all the driving that they did in those days. But we enjoyed it. Now, I have a humorous story about that I can tell at the end of the show, just to keep everyone hooked. It's my favorite Christmas story to tell, and it's one of my most enduring Christmas memories. And someone has an equally embarrassing Christmas story about me, so there's that. But I will not be telling that story. I will be telling my favorite Christmas story. Anyway, because, we would continue to go over to Mama and Papa Jim's house for Christmas lunch, right around 1 o'clock instead of like a Christmas dinner. We still had Christmas morning. And my mom would always get headaches if she didn't eat anything before 1 o'clock, going to Christmas lunch and holidays. It was always, Mom has a headache, which was a bit of a pain in the ass, honestly. We understood it, but by about the fifth year in a row that it happened, you're just like, what's going on? And we knew to assume, okay, Mom's going to be upset when we're leaving because she has a headache. Anyway, to counteract this, right around when I was 14, 15 years old, we started doing a frittata on Christmas morning, which for anyone who doesn't know what a frittata is, it's basically an egg pizza. One day I'll make one for the show. But the frittata has become our traditional Christmas morning food. And, it's egg, it's got asparagus in it, it's delicious. It's amazing. I love it. I look forward to it every year. And so breakfast is a major part of my holiday traditions. And you guys know how much I love breakfast. I'm a breakfast fanatic. But that's kind of the headspace that I'm in right now, thinking about Christmas and, that coming up in just a week. A little less than a week now, because Christmas is on a Friday. So, I will save my favorite Christmas story for the end of the show. Actually, I'm going to save my Christmas story for Monday's stream, because Monday's stream is going to be entirely focused on the holidays. I'm going to be playing one of my favorite Christmas-themed games. I've changed my mind about what I'm going to play. We're going to play Batman Arkham Origins, because I've got a little bit of RPG fatigue as far as computer RPGs. And Batman Arkham Origins is set at Christmas time, and it's underrated, and I just want to play it. So, there's that. That's my plan, is a little bit of Arkham Origins. But, anyway, Tasha's Cauldron, the Artificer, and my character, Tywin Valorum. Now, anyone who's been around for a long time will recognize the name Tywin Valorum, because he was the second character I played. And Tywin has a very special place in my heart, because I viewed Tywin... Cromwell was always kind of who I wanted to be in my heart of hearts. Tywin was who I thought I was, but better, because I don't want to play a fantasy version of myself. At least, I don't want to play me, but in a fantasy world, because I would not do well in a medieval fantasy world, at least in the state that I'm in right now. Maybe once I actually get decent at blacksmithing, I might be able to survive in a fantasy world, but for the time being, I'm still learning that trade, and I am still very reliant on the amenities of modern life, so there's that. Anyway, all that out of the way. Tywin was very much a product of my obsession, or my burgeoning obsession, with bladesmithing. I'd gotten super into Forged in Fire, I was watching it all the time, and Tywin kind of became my outlet for that, because I have always wanted to play a character like I said on Monday, who is a master of the blade and a master of the forge. I like the idea of someone making their own weapons, making their own armor. And partially this was... Initially, T1 was conceived as like, not an assassin, but a mercenary. I thought, wouldn't it be cool if there was this mercenary who, when he's hired for the job, he makes a weapon special for this job. If it requires something unique, like if say he's fighting someone, or he's going to kill someone who typically is on horseback, like he's going to go assassinate a guy while he's riding his horse, or he's going to lead a cavalry charge or something like that. He's going to have like a cavalry spear or a boar spear, something like that, and he'd forge it himself. Or if he needed a specific type of sword to counteract whatever kind of fighting style his enemy had, he'd forge that. And what this kind of turned into was T1 ended up being kind of the elven equivalent of a lost 20-something. In that he had spent his entire life trying to perfect this craft, that being smithing. He was told by his father, who was kind of like the greatest smith, or the head of the greatest smithing family in the entire realm that we were playing in, that his older brother was going to take over. And basically, we know that you're better, but your older brother's going to get the business. And if you don't quit smithing, we're just going to kick you out. And so his brother would like beat him up and stuff like that. But, T1 was always the better smith. And it was purely just a like tradition thing. This was... His father viewed it as no hard feelings. It was, your brother is the older brother. He is going to get the business. He doesn't want you smithing. I'm sorry, son. I know you're good at this, but you can't do it. You can't overshadow your brother like that. And so T-Win said, you know what? Screw it. Screw you guys. I'm leaving home. And he takes off. He basically becomes a journeyman. And as he travels around, he kind of picks up some fighting skills to just defend himself. And he also kind of takes on some work as a hired mercenary. Now, in the campaign that I was playing T-Win in, the main hook of the game was that we would all wake up with amnesia, and we wouldn't have any idea who we were. We didn't make our character sheets. We didn't know what class we were. We didn't know what level we were, how many hit points we had. All we knew was our background, and we basically had the last 5 years of our lives missing. Now, I've heard people say this is not a great way to start a campaign. Having played in one, I can tell you it's kind of fun. It's definitely interesting. It is a little bit frustrating, though, because you are very much at the mercy of the DM who built your character. Now Ashley was a fantastic GM. She did very well. Her whole thing, she was not trying to build, like, optimal builds. She wasn't trying to build unoptimal builds, but she was not min-maxing our characters to the degree that a lot of us would. Even as much as I kind of, like, dunk on min-maxers, or not dunk on, because min-maxing is perfectly fine. It's a completely reasonable way to play the game. I often find myself, trying to min-max my characters and making sure that I'm doing things as optimally as possible. Because, to be perfectly honest, and this is why I can't give min-maxers too much crap, there's nothing worse than being bad at what you're supposed to be good at in D&D. That's why it always sucks when you play the ranger and you roll crap on your tracking roll, because that's the reason you're there. That's the reason a lot of people, have rangers in their party. It's your job to track. Yes, you can swing swords and shoot a bow and cast some cool spells and stuff like that, but your job is to track people. And if you can't do that, then you start to question your existence, or at least your chosen profession. Like, yes, I'm good at hitting people with a sword, but I can't track for crap. Why am I a ranger? Why am I not just a fighter? Which is an inherent problem with 5th edition, in my mind. But that's neither here nor there. So, anyway, Tywin, as he was initially conceived, was an eldritch knight. And this was before the Artificer. There might have... Actually, no, there was not an Artificer Unearthed Arcana, even. That came in a little bit later. But the idea of Tywin being a smith was very much secondary. Which, yes, Elfie Rangers have to have a good track record. Absolutely. Also, their references are all animals. Animals or long-lost enemies who they've been hunting for years. Anyway, Tywin's crafting very much took a back seat. My whole idea behind the character was I'm going to make my own weapons, and eventually I want to learn how to make magic weapons. And 5th edition says no. Actually, 5th edition says yes, but it takes a significant investment of time and money to the point of almost being not... Actually, to the point of completely being not worth it, at least by PHB rules. Xanathar's Guide to Everything fixed crafting a little bit, but still not much. And there's a good reason behind this. D&D is about being an adventurer. Luke Hart has a great video on this. Your characters should not have a day job. Like your character's day job is being a D&D character, basically. You're an adventurer. Your goal is to adventure, based on your backstory. But honestly, like, your goal is to wander around, get treasure, fight things, live free. That's the ultimate goal of a D&D character. And if you have a day job, if you have some kind of business that you're invested in, you're going to inevitably be more focused on that than the actual adventuring. This is where some DMs will get super frustrated by this. I am one who would definitely get frustrated by this. It's the idea that, you give your characters this inn that they need to run, and you can do this in Waterdeep, Dragon Heist. They get possession of this kind of haunted inn. But it's this idea of, the players get so invested in running the inn, they forget to actually play D&D, and it basically just becomes like Hotel Tycoon. But you're playing it around a table with dice instead of on a computer. Basically, you get so focused on your day job, so focused on your business, that you don't remember to actually play the game. And that can be very frustrating for dungeon masters who, have story ideas planned out or, want adventure. Because, yeah, you can play like a job simulator on PC or something like that. I'm sure that'd be fun for a certain subset of people. But for most of the people at the table, they want to swing swords and kill shit. So the character who no longer has a reason to adventure is not going to adventure. So yeah, that's why crafting is not a big thing. That, and in other systems, even earlier editions of D&D where there were a whole, crafting trees, if you wanted to get good at stuff like that, you'd have to invest points in crafting over, again, actual adventurer stuff. So the chances of you getting completely and totally pwned by some, higher level creature because you took, like prestige classes and becoming a blacksmith. They go up as you level up, whereas you're supposed to become a better warrior, better adventurer. You put points into becoming a better blacksmith, and then you're just a worse adventurer. So I get it. However, there is a balance that needs to be struck there, because the idea of being a smith who is adventuring to find, new types of weapons, new materials, to, push themselves to become a master and to master the blade as well as the art of making the blade. That is, in my opinion, a cool character concept. And it's one that it's one that I have ideas for fueling at my table if I ever see someone who wants to kind of go down this path. I even set it up in one of my other games. This idea of kind of chasing the pieces of what's going to end up being your ultimate weapon that you then assemble. Because I like the idea of characters assembling their own weapons. It's just a cool thing to me. I can't necessarily explain it, but it's that whole thing of anyone can buy a sword, but if you can make a sword, then you're really a badass. So, let me go ahead and pull up chat on my phone so that I can switch over to the character sheet that I have for Tywin, which is set up not for an Eldritch Knight this time, but for an Artificer, specifically a Battlesmith. So, let's go over there. And I'm over here. And one thing that I've noticed, my new camera is 16:9 aspect ratio, so my camera here is blocking the stat part of the character sheet. So I will let you guys know what those are and scroll down so that you can see them. I might even zoom in or zoom out just so that they're easier to see. Anyway, since we glossed over the Artificer, let's get into some specifics about what an Artificer actually is and what they're supposed to do. So, the opening paragraph here. Masters of invention, artificers use ingenuity and magic to unlock extraordinary capabilities in objects. They see magic as a complex system waiting to be decoded and then harnessed in their spells and inventions. You can find everything you need to play one of these inventors in the next few sections. Artificers use a variety of tools to channel their arcane power. To cast a spell, an artificer might use alchemist supplies to create a potent elixir, calligrapher's supplies to inscribe a sigil of power, or tinkerer's tools to craft a temporary charm. The magic of artificers is tied to their tools and their talents, and few other characters can produce the right tool for a job as well as an artificer. So, right away, this is a character who's built around not just adventuring, but also crafting. So right away, you've kind of gotten away from this problem of if you focus too much on crafting, you're not going to focus as much on adventuring. Because so much of what this artificer can do is tied up in what they can build. Yes, their favorite store is Hobby Lobby. Although for some of them, their favorite store, it looks like, is Home Depot. Because a lot of what you're doing here involves building giant things. So, this is an intelligence-based class. That's going to be your casting ability. After intelligence, you're going to want to focus on constitution and dexterity. So, a lot of what you're doing here is based on intelligence. In fact, this character, Tywin, who's kind of like a master swordsman, in a lot of ways. He is not. He does not have a high strength. He actually has I dumped strength because you can do that. This is because of a feature within the Artificer that lets you use intelligence as your attack modifier, which we'll get to. That comes in. Just covered up the mic there. That comes in with the Battlesmith subclass, which is its own subclass. So, let me get my book situated here. And I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my character sheet. So, let's focus in here. I'm going to zoom way in. That's actually doing nothing. Okay. So if you look over top of my head here, you'll see that my strength's an 8, dexterity is a 15, constitution is a 14, intelligence 16, wisdom 12, charisma 10. Now this is a standard array build. I did not use point buy, and I did not roll. One day I will do a rolled stat character, and I will do a 3d6 in order character, which I'll generate live on the show for you guys. So, anywho, the Artificer gets a few awesome features here. Your spell save proficiencies, your save proficiencies are Constitution and Intelligence. And you start off with proficiency in Thieves' Tools, Tinkerer's Tools, and one type of Artisan's Tools. And you get to pick from Arcana, History, Investigation, Medicine, Nature, Perception, and Sleight of Hand. You choose 2 from that list. Now, I went with a High Elf as my race. T-Win is a High Elf, which gave me a +2 to Dexterity and a +1 to Intelligence. That's how I ended up with a 16 and a 15, respectively. And, yeah, that's really all the background there. From there, we should get into some of the Artificer features here. So, starting off at level 1, you get Magical Tinkering. And basically, this lets you imbue a mundane object with a little bit of magic. You need to use either Tinkerer's Tools or Artisan's Tools to do this, but you touch a tiny non-magical object as an action and give it one of the following magical properties. You can make the object shed a bright light in a 5-foot radius, and a dim light in an additional 5 feet, so that's 10 feet of light around you. Could be very useful. Could do away with a light cantrip, although it's not as much of a light. So you'll need to keep that in mind. Whenever tapped by a creature, the object emits a recorded message that can be heard up to 10 feet away. You utter the message when you bestow this property on the object, and the recording can be no more than 6 seconds long. So, instead of that, you could create basically one of those, like, museum things where you hit the button and it gives you a little bit of audio. That's something that Spoonie in my Saturday campaign would have loved to have. I don't know if he would take Artificer just to get that, though. Another property, the object can continuously emit your choice of an odor or nonverbal sound, wind, waves, chirping, or the like. The chosen phenomenon is perceivable up to 10 feet away. Or a static visual effect appears on one of the object's surfaces. This effect can be a picture, up to 25 words of text, lines and shapes, or a mixture of these elements if you like. So yes, you can take a ring and you can put the inscription on it if you so desire. And then for spell casting, you are what's referred to as a 2/3 caster. So basically, you're not going to get the same number of spell slots that a cleric, a wizard, or a sorcerer would get. You're more along the lines of what like a paladin gets. So, not as kind of hampered as a warlock is, and not as wimpy as like a ranger when it comes to spell casting. You're more in line with a paladin or an eldritch knight. Although an eldritch knight I think is also a half caster, so you're a little bit more than that. But like the warlock and like the paladin, you get additional features. Sorry about that. Anyway, you also prepare your spells like a wizard does, so you essentially know all of your spells. Every spell that's on the list, you know. And then at the end of a long rest, for anyone who's unfamiliar with the way it works, for anyone with a long rest, you spend time preparing your spells. It takes like a minute per spell level. And you basically build out your spell book for the day. And this comes from this kind of old idea. Matt Colville talks a lot about this, but the idea of D&D magic is that you memorize a spell, it's in your head, and as soon as you say it, it disappears from your book and you forget it. And then you have to basically relearn it. There's a term for this. I don't remember what it is. And it has to do... This came from someone's fantasy series. I don't remember whose off the top of my head, but that's where this conception of casting magic comes from. Now, at second level, you get what's called Infuse Item. This is kind of your main feature as an Artificer. This is the example of your Eldritch Invocations as a Warlock. And what this lets you do is, at a given level, you can infuse a certain number of items with one infusion each. So when you get it at second level, you can have 2 infused items, and you know 4 different infusions. And these infusions last basically in perpetuity until you try to infuse one more item or put a different infusion on the same item. So what this lets you do is turn non-magical items into magical items. It is a great feature, and it's what gets around having to physically craft all of those magical items, which even using the Xanathar's rules is a laborious and expensive process that can kill you if you mess it up, depending on how you roll. So, at second level, when you get it, you can infuse 2 items. You know 4 infusions. T-Win here is a 6th level Artificer. So he knows 6 infusions and can have 3 infused items at a time. Now, there are several different kinds of infusions. Let me go ahead and go back to what you can do there. They can, make a magical suit of armor that's a suit of armor with different magical properties, or one that has kind of better defense. You can basically make a +2 suit of armor at a certain level. You can replicate certain magic items, which is one of the best things that the Artificer gets to do, is actually replicate these items. You can enhance weapons, essentially make them +1 or +2. You can make a helmet that gives you advantage on initiative, and you can't be surprised. That's pretty cool. You can create a homunculus servant, which has a small amount of attacks. Mostly it's just kind of like a... Let's see. Yeah, it's basically a pet. That's really all it is. The Battlesmith gets a better pet, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But yeah, that's one of the options. You know, you can... There's all kinds of stuff that you can do. You can make a weapon that shoots twice. A returning weapon, which is a +1 bonus to attack and damage. And then it returns to your hand as soon as you use it. So this would be a weapon with a thrown property. So basically you can make like a dagger of returning. And that's kind of the Artificer infusion thing. It's a cool thing. It lets you have magic items that you would otherwise have to go find. And, you know, the way that it works is you infuse them during a long rest. You can infuse multiple items at once. And, yeah, from there, they just have the infusion on them. So, at 3rd level, you get 2 features. One is the Artificer Specialist, which we'll talk about in a second. And the other one is Right Tool for the Job, which lets you produce exactly the tool you need with either Tinkerer's tools or Artisan's tools. And you can magically create one set of Artisan's tools in an unoccupied space within 5 feet of you. It's 1 hour of uninterrupted work. And the tools are non-magical. And they vanish as soon as you use another feature again. So if you come along something where you need a certain set of Artisan's tools to do a specific job, you can basically make them. It's just kind of a flavor feature. It's fine. I don't see any situation where this will... Yeah, I don't see any situation where this is going to like break a game or something like that, but it basically just gives you basically just gives you free tools, which is nice. I could easily see you I can easily see someone like playing a fantasy version of Tim Taylor with this. In fact, that would be very fun. If I ever get involved in a comedy game, I will do an Artificer who is Tim the Toolman Taylor. I need to work on my Tim Taylor impression. It's not good, so I can't do it right now. So, keep bumping my mic. Moving on from there, we get to the Battlesmith, which is my arcane, or my Artificer specialty. And kind of the flavor text here is, armies require protection and someone has to put things back together if defenses fail. A combination of protector and a medic, a Battlesmith is an expert at defending others and repairing both material and personnel. Excuse me. To aid in their work, Battlesmiths are accompanied by a steel defender, a protective companion of their own creation. Many soldiers tell stories of nearly dying before being saved by a Battlesmith and a steel defender. And it talks a little bit about Eberron there, but basically you are the man who builds the weapons. And you have proficiency with martial weapons, in this particular subclass, which is nice. So when you get this, you get proficiency with an additional set of tools. So by this point, I'd actually have 3 tool proficiencies. Let's see, Tinker's Tools. And I guess from there I'd go like... There we go. Carpenter's Tools, there we go. There's a term for woodworkers. It's carpenters, 5th edition. So yeah, these are all like the tools that I can use at 3rd level. I'm a major tool. Yeah. And you also get some additional spells that you can learn at this level. Shield is a good one. Let's see, at 5th level, some of them are like paladin spells. Like you can get Branding Smite, Banishing Smite at 17th level. But the basic idea is you are a less ass-kicking paladin. And I don't mean that in a derogatory term. You're not as like smash your face in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit like the paladin is. You're more, I'm going into battle, I'm going to defend people, I can hold my own, and I'm going to build all of these crazy magical weapons for people. So it's a different feature. You're more like a cleric in that regard, that you're out there to be support, but you can also hold your own to a certain degree. So it's tempting to say you are a cleric of the Forge, but there's also a Forge cleric, which might not be official. I don't remember if the Forge cleric is actually in one of the books. It might just be an Unearthed Arcana thing. But yeah, that's... Speaking of which, I have to know, I have not looked this up. Is it possible for me to get animate objects at a certain point? Yes. I am capable of learning animate objects once I get 5th level spells. Animate objects is broken as shit. I don't know if I've talked about that at length. I think I actually talked about that with Austin a few times. But basically, animate objects deals too much damage, and you are capable of having way too many summoned or animated objects, for lack of a better term, or to use the term that it uses. Basically, you've got a whole bunch of little tiny attacks that deal small amounts of damage, but when there's 15 of them, it doesn't really make much of a difference. If 15 things deal 2 damage, you're looking at like a fighter's attack at that point. So, anyway, you get access to those additional spells, and then you also get a feature called Battle Ready, which basically gives you proficiency with martial weapons, and when you attack with magical weapons, including infused weapons, you can use your intelligence modifier instead of strength or dexterity for the attack and damage rolls. So, this is what allows T-Win to dump his strength. If I were starting this character at 1st level, I would probably take a dip in Fighter. I'd probably start with 1 or 2 levels in Fighter, just so I could hold my own in combat and then become an Artificer. However, since T-Win started at 6th level, I have him started here at 6th level, and with that in mind, I can dump strength pretty easily. If you were going from, 1st level on, like if you had to start at 1st level, you could probably use ranged weapons and rely on cantrips and stuff like that, but dumping strength at that point would be very difficult. In fact, I would recommend you dump charisma instead if you're starting this at 1st level and don't want to take a dip in fighter. So, anyway, with that in mind, you also get a Steel Defender. Now, the Steel Defender is a medium-sized construct. You decide whether it has 2 legs or 4 legs, and it's basically your robot buddy. It is your Baymax. It is... Actually, Baymax is probably the best way to describe it. It has hit points that are equal to 2 plus your intelligence modifier plus 5 times your artificer level. So you end up having a good amount of hit points. Like at this level, Steel Defender has 35 hit points, which is more than most wizards. It's almost as many hit points as T-Win has here. And the Steel Defender cannot be surprised. It has a 15 armor class, 40-foot speed, and 3 times per day it can use a feature called Repair, which lets it repair itself 2d8 plus your proficiency bonus, or repair another object or another construct for 2d8 plus your proficiency bonus. So if you are in like a situation where you're protecting a castle from a siege, you can put your Steel Defender on wall duty and have it kind of rebuild the walls as things are going. It can't heal people, so it's not completely like Baymax, but it's there. And it can also use a feature called Deflect Attack. Defender poses disadvantage on the attack roll of one creature it can see that's within 5 feet of it, provided the attack roll is against a creature other than the defender. So basically, you put it next to you or put it next to someone vulnerable, and if someone comes up to attack it, then you can sick the defender on them to distract them and impose disadvantage. It's pretty nice. Now, flavor-wise, what I would do for T-Win, T-Win has very feline features. One of the interesting things that I did with him was I made him a little bit deformed. Not like ugly, but he's got cat eyes instead of like regular elf eyes, and he has like sharp cat fangs. So he's got some weird genetic things going on. And because of that, he has an affinity for cats. He loves him some cats. And the way that this would be portrayed with the Steel Defender is the Steel Defender would be a giant steel cat. Or a medium-sized steel cat. And yes, the Defender is fast, because it has a movement speed of 40 feet, which is 10 more than you get, for the most part. So it's faster than Baymax, but it basically serves the same purpose. And it acts on your bonus action. Yeah, it shares your initiative, but takes its turn immediately after yours. It can move and use its reaction on its own, but the only action it takes on its turn is the dodge action, unless you take a bonus action on your turn to command it to take another action. So, you basically use your reaction, or not your, you use your bonus action to make this thing do things. So, as a Battlesmith, that's where a lot of your bonus actions are going. So that makes like two-weapon fighting as a Battlesmith a bad idea. And then the last feature to mention here is extra attack, which you get at 5th level, lets you attack twice. So at this point, yeah, you really are equivalent to like a war cleric. And those are the main features of the Artificer. We'll talk a little bit about spells here in just a little bit. But if you keep going with the Battlesmith, the next feature you get is at 9th level, which is called Arcane Jolt. And what this lets you do is, it says you've learned new ways to channel arcane energy to harm or heal with either your hit target or a magic weapon attack on your steel defender. Hits a target, you can channel magical energy through the strike to create one of the following effects. You can make it deal 2d6 force damage. Or you choose one creature or object you can see within 30 feet of the target. Healing energy flows into the chosen recipient, restoring 2d6 hit points to it. So basically, you infuse your attack with magic at 9th level, and you can either deal additional damage to a target in front of you, or if there's someone within 30 feet of you who needs healing, you can heal that person the same amount. It's pretty good. Pretty good. I like it. Very useful. And I'm just flipping back through here to talk a little bit about some of the Artificer, just kind of general things that you get. Because if you keep going here, at 7th level, you get Flash of Genius. So when you or another creature you can see within 30 feet of you make an ability check or saving throw, you can use your reaction to add your intelligence modifier to the roll. And you can use this feature a number of times equal to your intelligence modifier. You regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Basically, this is the whole, like, if you're Jimmy Neutron, for people of my generation, this is your think, brain blast moment. And for anyone who's confused, you can watch Jimmy Neutron on Hulu, I think. Doesn't really hold up all that well, in my personal opinion. But that's just my opinion. So, might not be worth watching. But still, Jimmy Neutron, boy genius. It's a show. And a movie. But it's a show. So, let's see. And at 10th level, you get Magic Item Adept. You've achieved a profound understanding of how to use and make magical items. You can attune to up to 4 magical items at once. Gives you one more than most other people. If you craft a magic item with a rarity of common or uncommon, it takes you a quarter of the normal time and it costs you half as much of the usual gold. So there is improving some of the crafting there. And then as you level up, once you get to 14th, that number of attuned magical items goes up to 5, and it lets you ignore all class, race, spell, and level requirements when it comes to attuning to a magical item. And then at 18th level, you can attune to up to 6 magical items at once. And as you level with the Battlesmith, at 15th level, you get a feature called Improved Defender, which lets your Arcane Jolt and Steel Defender become more powerful. Your Arcane Jolt increases to 4d6, and your Steel Defender gets +2 to its armor class. And whenever your Steel Defender uses its Deflect attack, the attacker takes force damage equal to 1d4 plus your intelligence modifier. So at that point, at 15th level, you're probably going to have a +5 to your intelligence. So you're looking at a max of 9 damage on a reaction that also imposes disadvantage. It's not bad. So from there, let's take a look at some of the spells that we have here. And we'll kind of end the conversation on spells and talking a little bit about some of that stuff. So, when it comes to spells, you, at this point, know 3 cantrips, and you've got 4 first-level spell slots and 2 second-level, because you are not a full caster. So let's open up some spells. So let's address the Battlesmith spells kind of first and foremost. Heroism and Shield at 3rd level are pretty good defensive buffs. As a kind of defender character, you might want to consider taking those. Branding Smite and Warding Bond are okay. Warding Bond is probably not your best option in this particular situation. Branding Smite, if you want to play more of an attacker, you can go for Branding Smite. Aura, Vitality, and Conjure Barrage are, again, just okay. 13th level, though, Aura of Purity and Fire Shield just give you more kind of defense. That's really what this class is built around, is, adding to your defensive capabilities as you, also kind of deal out some damage and stuff like that. So a lot of your best spells here are going to be built around kind of, defending and cure wounds and stuff like that. So, as for what I went with here, with any kind of frontline caster where you have a melee weapon, it's always good to go for something like Booming Blade or Green Flame Blade, which is what I've gone with here. And you actually, I'm mistaken, 2 cantrips at this point. I know a 3rd because I'm a high elf, and you get 1 wizard You get 1 wizard cantrip from the spell list at that point. So I picked Mind Sliver, which is an intelligence save for psychic damage. Not a lot of things resist psychic damage, and intelligence saves are often very low with monsters, so that's always a good option when you want something that deals damage that not a lot of people can deal with. And it's cool to use a psionic power, because I do honestly think that Tasha's, with all of its psionics, is kind of preparing us for a Dark Sun game. That's the only reason I can think of for psionics to so heavily enter at this stage. I think they might actually pull the trigger on it. I hope they might actually pull the trigger on it. 2021 will show us. Maybe even 2022, I don't know. But I do think we might be getting a return to Athos. Let's see. I am going to take a quick break, and we will come back to talk about the rest of the spells. All right, we're back. Cool. So, spells. Let's take a look at these. Here, just above my head, let me make sure that's actually visible. Yes. Cool, cool. So, first level spells that we have here. What I've got here is Absorb Elements, Cure Wounds, and Featherfall. Basically, Featherfall is something that every party should have at some point. You use it so that if you somehow end up falling off of something high, you don't actually end up dying or taking damage. It's one of those things that seems useless until it absolutely comes up, and then at that point it is indispensable. And then Absorb Elements is something that comes from Xanathar's Guide, I believe. Yes. And basically, let me look up the exact text here. So, basically, the spell captures some of the incoming energy, lessening its effect on you and storing it, for your next melee attack. You have resistance to the triggering damage type until the start of your next turn. Also, the first time you hit with a melee attack on your next turn, the target takes an extra 1d6 damage of the triggering type, and the spell ends. And you can increase the extra damage by a d6 per casting level. So basically, this is a reaction spell. You use it when, like, someone hits you with a fireball or something like that. You use it it gives you resistance, so you take half damage, and then you get to use that damage type in your next melee attack, which is awesome. It's cool. It's a first level spell. Very useful. Useful on pretty much any spell list. Rangers can get it, druids can get it, wizards, artificers. Really, almost anyone who uses melee attacks and has spells should take Absorb Elements. Eldritch Knights can get it, because they use the wizard spell list. Cure Wounds, if you're going to be a defender, it's always good to have someone who can do Cure Wounds. And then down here what we have, Enhance Ability, Web, and Lesser Restoration. Those all kind of come up in various different ways. Web is a great kind of area of effect. I believe it is what they call a save or suck spell. No, it's not. It's a crowd control spell. Basically, you tie everyone to a single location, and as long as they can't set things on fire, they'll be fine. And there are some other good ones that are handy to have on hand. Just because, you technically know all of these spells and prepare them on a daily basis. So, Fairy Fire, if you are going into combat against things that are known to be invisible, or you suspect that you might be, this helps you deal with invisible creatures. It can also help against creatures with high AC. So if you're going up against a boss monster, you can give characters advantage to attack. And Sanctuary is decent. Basically, you get an area where creatures can't attack you, but you can attack them. Bonus action casting time. The only thing where Sanctuary comes up and isn't as good is against ranged attacks. Ranged attacks aren't really affected by Sanctuary because it's within a certain radius. And if they're outside of that radius, they can obviously shoot into you. On the second level side of things, aid, you can give some additional temporary hit points. Continual flame is nice if you just need a light source. As an elf, my character will have dark vision, so that and dark vision are kind of a moot point, or a moo point. Cow's opinion doesn't really matter. But if you are playing a human or you've got a bunch of humans in your party, it might help, because not everyone will have dark vision. An enhanced ability, just so you know, there's different options to choose from with it, but it lets each of your... there's different effects that you can choose from that give you bonuses to certain ability scores. And so it all depends on kind of the situation that you're coming into, but it can help. It does grant advantage on ability checks in certain situations. Invisibility is always good. And lesser restoration is good for is necessary for certain situations. Not always going to be necessary, but certainly, if someone ends up cursed, you might not need to go see a cleric, depending on how bad the curse is. See invisibility is good if, again, you're going up against invisible enemies. Spider climb if you have to sneak places. And then I already mentioned the Battlesmith spells of Heroism and Shield, which kind of grant some good defensive buffs. And all in all, you've got some great options here. And so this is a great kind of defensive class. Sorry about the noise there. It adds some good utility to battle. It's good to have another person who can be up there in the thick of it with you, but can also, make magic items and stuff like that. So there's a lot of good things that the Artificer can do. It's a good addition to the game, and I'm glad that it's in there, especially for someone like myself who wants to have a character who can, build magic items or, create magic weapons. Excuse me. As for multi-classing, again, you can take a dip in fighter if you want to. There are certain situations where that might, end up a little bit better. You will miss out on some great things if you do that, though, so keep that in mind. Your Steel Defender and your Arcane Jolt will not get as powerful if you take a couple levels to become a fighter, or you start as a fighter for a couple levels. So that's always a thing to keep in mind. But again, it's up to you. It's up to you what you want to do there. Cool. All right. Well, guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. I think we've had a good conversation on what all the Artificer is capable of doing, and why I would end up playing this particular character in given situations. So thank you so much for tuning in. Next week, I'm actually going to start the stream a little bit early on Monday. I'm probably going to start it around 7. Maybe even a little bit earlier. I'll have to talk to Elfie about that and see just kind of what works out. And how long I want to do things, because, it'll depend on, us packing for a trip. We're going to go out of town. So there's not going to be episodes for or there's going to be an episode next week, but there's not. It's going to take a while for me to upload it to YouTube and stuff like that. But I think I'm going to start the stream a little bit early and play a little bit late. So, I'm looking at going 3 to 4 hours for this particular stream, just because, I love playing the game so much, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun doing it. So that's kind of what we're looking at there. A lot of Christmas talk, stuff like that. So definitely tune in for my Arkham Origins Christmas Spectacular. And remember, if you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard. Have a happy holidays, and I'll see you guys next time.